Welcome to the Whurthy Services training video series. This is Module 5, Advanced Whurthy Setup. In this 7th video, we're going to walk through Whurthy holidays. We'll start by looking at public holidays and what they are. We'll then review how a service provider can request vacation. And finally, we'll look at how super users and business admins can manage vacation requests. But before we get into that, we're just going to overview how public holidays and vacations for service providers impact the Whurthy services booking experience. Whurthy holidays allows Whurthy services to ensure that bookings are not scheduled while service providers are away. So firstly, public holidays are checked first by Whurthy services. So the way that Whurthy services manages this is that it does not allow any bookings to be scheduled on a public holiday. Simply put, if one of your customers tries to schedule on a public holiday that you've entered into the system, then Whurthy will actually communicate there are no openings on that public holiday. And it will also offer them the first available appointment for the service they've booked or for the service provider they've booked after that. So they're not left hanging with a blank search result. So that's pretty straightforward. When it comes to vacation requests, that's going to be the lion's share of this video. The first setting is that in the Whurthy settings or the global settings module, there is that setting that you may recall from previous videos around workflow approval being active. If workflow approval is not active, then vacation requests are automatically accepted and that time will be carved off. That's most appropriate for smaller organizations where really perhaps it's a shared ownership and all the service providers in effect are their own boss. So at that point, everyone's managing their own schedule and you've got the approval turned off and there's no extra effort. However, for larger organizations, the Whurthy Services vacation request workflow is made active when you turn that workflow approval setting to being active. And this will offer larger organizations some peace of mind around scheduling availability, for example. So it will allow you, as we are going to see in this video, to be able to see all of the requests, to look at the existing requests, and to manage those requests overall, to manage that schedule. And so with that said, let's dive in and take a look at the staff experience. So as is always the case, when we want to look at administrative feature, we're going to look over to the right-hand side on the Whurthy Link sidebar. We're going to scroll down and we're going to look for administration. Now, currently, the ability to be able to see public holidays is reserved to super users. However, business admins will be able to see the service provider vacations. So in this case, we can see public holidays here. You may recall from the previous video in this module that highlighted the different Whurthy user security. And so we've got staff public holidays and the overall settings are reserved to super users. Business admins will be able to see, in this case, the label is therapist, but they will be able to see therapist vacations or service provider vacations, whatever label you use for that. So let's have a look first of all at public holidays. It's really quite simple. So when I click on that public holidays link, we literally get to see all of the public holidays that are entered in. Now, in this case, we have the Thanksgiving holiday at the time of this recording for 2022 has already passed. And so that's okay. You could ultimately come in and delete it at your convenience. When your Whurthy Services installation is implemented, one of the things that the Whurthy team will do is we will set up the next year or so of these public holidays for you. But moving forward, the assumption is that this is an aspect that you can manage for yourself. We'd recommend, as you're moving toward the end of a given year, that you're looking out to perhaps the year after. So our recommendation would always be to sort of have the next year already entered in, particularly if you are accustomed to customers booking 3 or 6 months out. And that would just save you challenges where customers are booking. And ultimately, we don't automatically have public holidays set for a number of reasons. Whurthy Services is implemented in different jurisdictions, which means there are going to be different holidays. There may also be different public holidays based on various reasons that are beyond jurisdictional or geographical reasons. So whilst we've given you as a user, as an organization using Whurthy Services, the flexibility, we just assume that you will be able to update. And so that's what the purpose of this video is. It's pretty straightforward. I can look at an existing holiday, for example. I can click on that and I can see, oh, this Thanksgiving is gone. So I can just go ahead, delete the holiday, and that's taken care of. And now it's gone from the list. And for that matter, at the time of the recording, Remembrance Day is also done as well. So I could go and delete that. So fairly simple. This is a very consistent feel. If I wanted to edit, I could click on Christmas Day. And if for some reason I had put in the incorrect date, I could change that. It's really simple. You just give it a name for the holiday and you select a date. So I'm going to go ahead and update that. That's good. And we get the success flash message. And then finally, we've got this add public holiday. So I could scroll down. Now you'll see it's going to show in groups of 10, the next 10. So I can see here, we've got through to Thanksgiving on the first page. At the bottom, we've got the pagination buttons. So I'm going to click on 2 to go to the next page. So we can see that we've literally got till the end of 2023 in this particular instance. So that will probably be good until the end of 2022. So at that point, there is the possibility if one of your customers books like 2 years ahead, there is the possibility that they might book on a holiday, but ultimately you could always go and cancel that. So adding a holiday is very, very simple. I could do New Year's Day on 2024, for example. So I can click on add a holiday. I can go New Year's Day. So very simple. And now I'll just come in here and push this. If I click on this, I can click on the year. And if you'll notice, I get this selection of years. I can jump to 2024. I can click on January. I can click on 1. And now I've got the 1st of January, 2024. I can create the holiday, and it really is as simple as that. I can scroll down. I can click to the last. So if you've got a spare 10, 15 minutes, you would be quite able to go and book our public holidays for the next 5 or 10 years. It's really up to you. So that covers the public holidays. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at how the setting for this is set up when it comes to vacation requests. And then we're going to look at the 2 different perspectives. So let's start with the setting. So as is always the case, from an administrative point of view, we're going to look to the Whurthy link sidebar, scroll down, and we have looked at this before, the Whurthy settings page. And I just want to draw your attention to this because in that general settings card, we see approval workflows active is set to yes. So if that's set to no, then vacation requests will be automatically marked as approved, and that time will be carved. So I'm not going to demonstrate that in this video because once you've created a vacation request, whether or not approval workflows are active, the reality is exactly the same process to create a vacation request. The only difference is that time immediately carved off, or is there an approval step? So we will now take a look with this approval workflows active. We'll look over again, the right-hand sidebar, we'll scroll down, and now we will have a look at the service provider, or in this particular instance, the therapist vacation. So I'm going to send around the middle of the administration card. Business admins should be able to see this. Super users will definitely be able to see it. So we can click on therapist vacations. So currently there are none. And so I'm looking at this from the staff or from the super user's point of view. So if I am a staff member, it's going to look a little different. So we're going to take a look at the star or the service provider making their own vacation request. So I've jumped over to another browser now. And when we look at this, if I scroll down, this particular account that is logged in is just a staff level user account. So in the previous video, we looked at staff, business admins, and super users. Now, when we look at the business admin and super user perspective, they can go in and they can create their own vacation requests. If my account is of that staff security level, then I will see my vacation requests under administration. And also in the navbar admin, I will see exactly the same layout as well, my vacation requests. So when I click on that, my vacation requests. Now I get to see a different layout. I get to see my vacation requests, that I get to add one, and it's telling me I currently have no vacation requests. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that. So now we are in that form to create a vacation request. It's pretty simple. We've got a start date. So I'm going to pick, say, next week, but typically many instances you might be encouraging your team members to book out. Let's go for January, for example. I want to book, you know what? I want to book from, say, the 23rd of December, and I'm going to be coming back on I'm going to end on the 4th. Now, just a little note here. You would want to do the end date as the final day you are away. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm back on the 5th, then do the day before. Because what Whurthy will do is it will check from the 23rd, from that start date until the end date. And if it's approved, it will block that time off. Now, if, for example, your organization is not open on a Monday, which is quite possible, and you selected a Monday, then it would be moot, because what happens is the hierarchy of holidays, as it were, or openings, is that Whurthy starts and goes, okay, first of all, is there a public holiday? Then Whurthy asks, what are the opening hours? So what are the opening hours in global settings? And then Whurthy asks, okay, is this service provider or these service providers for this service, are they on vacation? And then finally, are they working on this day? So as it were, public holidays are the first check, then the opening hours globally, then the holidays for each service provider, and then the working hours for each service provider. So that's the hierarchy. So if you have opening hours and you're closed on Mondays, for example, then obviously someone booking to the end date of Monday really is irrelevant at that point. It's just not going to matter. So our encouragement is just to encourage your team members, as it were, your service providers, to be selecting dates that really represent, this is my first day of vacation, start date, this is my last day of vacation, end date. Now, optionally, there is a comments field. Now, as we'll see when the vacation request workflow activates, I'm going to enter in comments to show you how this displays, but some information about this vacation request can be optionally entered here. And so what this allows is, for example, the service provider, whoever is submitting that vacation request, can just provide some additional context to help understand. They may be taking vacation requests for, say, some personal reason or whatever the case. Again, this is all going to be down to your policies, your procedures in your organization. Just the design intention, though, is that just allowing the comments just allows that a little bit of communication. And we'll see when we work through the workflow for the vacation request approval, you'll actually get to see that the approval or the approver gets to offer a response as well if they decline. So that really is it. It's very, very simple, a start date and end date, a comment. So I'm going to go ahead and create the request. Okay, this is a great check. So I was busy talking, and of course I selected a start and end date. And then, of course, I promptly changed it because I changed my mind, right? So excellent. I'm going to go ahead now. It's done a check and it said, you want to have a start date, not after the end date. So you want to have the start date before the end date. It's also going to check that both fields are filled as well. So it's doing a little bit of error control. So let me correct that. And I'm going to come back and say, let's come back here to January. I'm coming back, say, on the 3rd. Okay, so I'll be off until the 2nd. And let's create the request now. And so now we're looking at the service provider's vacation request that resulted from that. So we can see in this card here that the vacation request status is 1 requested. Now, if the approval workflow is inactive, that would automatically be 2 approved. So next we can see the therapist. In this case, I've created a therapist called Demo for the purposes of this video. I don't think it's very unlikely that anyone actually has the name of Demo, but you never know. And then we can see we've got a start date, we've got an end date, and then we can see the comments they've entered. Now, also at the bottom, we can see there's a vacation request history log. This will get filled out as the vacation request workflow works through the process, as it were. Initially, we can see when it was created and that it's telling the requester, the service provider that made the request, that there's a task being assigned to the vacation request approver. And so I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to be able to see, first of all, I'm going to check on therapist vacations because I get to see now that there has been a request that's been entered. So that's good. But really the actual request workflow, as we previously looked at, whenever there's a workflow type activity, that leads to a task, right? Now, I am logged in as the person who is the vacation request approver. There is only one person ultimately into that role, and that would be our expectation for most organizations. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to scroll down, I'm going to look for administration tasks, and now I can see here's that task. This will also show under my tasks as well, because I am that person. So now I can see there's a vacation request for demo client, which is the first and last name of demo. And I can see it's not started, it's marked a priority, and it's put in today's due date. So it's always marking a vacation request as being a high priority. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the link. And so now what this does now is this shows me more of the details so I can see here's the task. This is generic task information. These instructions came from the process expertise profile list. We'll be looking at that in a future video. And I can see it's very simple instructions: review the vacation request task and approve as applicable. And then we can see here under description, it's pulled in the request comments. So this task has been built where whatever those comments were will be entered into the task description for the approver, and we can see when it was due. So now we get a slightly different look, as would be typical for a task. It's explicitly letting me know whilst I'm in the task list, and I can go back to tasks, I can add a task, and I can delete the task. Only super users can do that though, just to be clear. But I'm going to click on here to review the vacation request. So now I get to see, okay, here's all the information. It's showing me that there's no decision information, obviously, but now we actually get the decision. So in the task action, we get vacation request decision. So we can either approve or decline. Now, if we decline, and I'm going to go ahead and decline just to show you how this looks. So declined with this reason. So you're really able to use this. If, for example, if someone booked a vacation and it was a sort of scheduling challenge for you, this would be a good time now to explain, let me see, another therapist is already off. Can you come back a day earlier? So this gives you a sense of how you could have, just that you could provide some feedback so that when they resubmit, so they would be required to put another vacation request. Whurthy is built that way deliberately. It just allows the approver to give that feedback, to explain. And if you are declining, it is requiring some comments. If you approve, no comments are required. So I'm going to go ahead and just to complete that, to show you from the perspective of thoroughness. Okay, so now we can see that the task has been marked as completed. So I can click on the completed task link. And I get to see here that while the task is completed, we'll need to go and have a look at the actual vacation request. So we're going to look over to the right-hand side in the administration section, and we can take a look here at the therapist vacation. And now we can see from the business admin super user perspective that we've now got the vacation request status as declined. So let's go and have a look at what the service provider's experience is. So what I'm going to do now is in the service provider's experience, I'm in another browser, logged in obviously as the service provider for their account. I'm going to go ahead and just refresh. So we can see a few things that have happened here. First of all, we can see that now it's being marked as declined, and I can see the original request. But if I look down, this is the important part. So here we get to see in that vacation request history log, we get to see in red, the vacation request is declined. And when we look at an approved request, you'll see that's actually going to be green text. We get to see who the approver was, and then it enters in the information or the request comments that they entered, and it passes them back. So again, this has been mentioned in previous videos when it comes to workflow. The intention of these workflows and the ability to track conversation is not designed to replace human beings having a conversation. Just to be really clear, the expectation is that for many organizations, there may be a conversation between the different people, different team members, talking about, oh, I'm going to have this time. Is that good for you? And you probably, with many teams, there'll be an understanding of what is going to work before the request is even put in. However, this vacation request workflow becomes more useful and more helpful given the design intention, the larger the organization becomes, right? So the idea is if this was a 20, 30 or more or sized organization with 20 or 30 service providers, for example, having those conversations, particularly across different locations, may be more challenging. So back to the initial premise of this video, that for smaller organizations, turning on vacation requests approval, turning that workflow on may not make much sense. But for larger organizations in particular, particularly if you're across different geographical locations, then the idea of allowing that conversation to be tracked. In other words, here the requester was able to enter the explanation, the approver was able to provide this feedback. And so from there, then the service provider may go, okay, well, I'll put in a different date, can you come back a day earlier? So I'm actually going to come back. I'll do the add vacation request. So I'm going to go from not the 23rd of November, I'm going to go from the 23rd of December. And I will, rather than coming back on the 1st, I will come back and I'll be back for the 30th. Maybe they needed someone on the 30th of December. So, adjusted the time, the end dates as requested. And so I can now create the request. And there we go, that's come through. So now I'm going to jump over to the approver's experience. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh the page. So now we can see there is a brand new request in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on my tasks. And so here we see I've got this task that's been assigned to me. I'm going to go ahead and review or click the review vacation request button. I'm now going to go ahead and go approved. I don't need to make a comment here. I'm going to click on the complete task button. So that's all done. So I'm going to jump back over to the service provider's experience. So with that in mind, I'm going to click on the back to requests button, because now I get to see the one that was declined that's entered here, and then I get to see the one that was approved. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this one here, and I get to see it's approved. I get to see that, there were no comments. The vacation request was approved, who the approver was, and that's done. And just as a note, by the way, whilst I didn't show this, emails are also sent. And we've looked at emails being sent for other workflows and tasks and whatnot. So Whurthy services will, once the vacation request has sent, when you have the workflow approval as active, then the vacation request approver will be emailed an email basically letting them know there's a task for this vacation request with a link to the task. And when it's approved or declined, then the requester will also be emailed letting them know. So you don't have to worry about remembering to check when it comes to a task being assigned, or when it comes to the requester waiting to hear, have I got that vacation request? Whurthy Services is going to take care of that for you. So that really concludes our review of public holidays and the vacation request workflow. And just the idea being that these aspects of Whurthy services, these elements of functionality are really designed to flesh out and make sure that the scheduling potential of Whurthy services really is going to allow for all of the needs when it comes to making sure that service providers are being booked when they're available and they're not when they're not available. Whurthy, value made easy.